who appointed me to the commission, so thank you for giving me the honor and the privilege. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County, vis a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. So our first item on the agenda is adoption of our December 15, 2020 minutes. Are there any questions or is there a motion?
I move for approval.
Thank you. There is a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Johnson and a second by Commissioner Jones. I think when we have our masks on, I think Robin wants me to at least say who is making the motion and the second. So if I have a stutter, just say your last name. So thank you. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? None seen, and the motion passes. All right, adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes? Ms. Ziegler?
Yes, we do have several. 312 Broadway has been corrected. 2012 Cedar has a correction plan submitted, so it's in the works. And then the following I've asked to defer: 200 Broadway, 1309 Shelby, and 2906 Belmont. So that's I, K, L, M, and N.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to ask if there's anyone in the public to? No? Okay, just want to make sure on the protocol. Anybody have any questions, or is there a motion to accept the agenda as stated and also with the deferrals? Okay, Dr. Williams made the motion.
Second.
And David Price made second. Sorry. Ben, did you say something?
Ben made the motion.
Oh, Ben made the motion. Sorry. See, this is why you have to say it out loud since we have our masks on. Okay, Robin, that was good. First and second, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Okay, none opposed. The motion passes. Thank you. And I believe we do not have any council members present. If so, please come and say, yes, I'm here. All right? None so. Other than should we ask Mayor Purcell if he has any, are you waiting for a project?
My work here is done.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your presence. Okay, I think we're to the consent agenda.
All right, as noticed to the public, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. We will read each case out one by one. If you're in opposition to the project, please raise your hand when we call out the case you want heard. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. So the first item on the consent agenda are the administrative permits issued for the prior month. 2618 Barton Avenue, new construction of an addition and setback determination. 518 Russell Street, alterations and partial demolition. And the historic landmark signage guidelines. Next slide, please. Staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with the applicable conditions, finding the applications to meet the design guidelines of their respective overlays.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions to her? Okay. Otherwise, is there a motion?
I move to approve consent agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Jones. And second, Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion? Okay, thank you, and that passes. Thank you.
All right, this case is the Part 2 review of an SP application for proposed mixed-use development on this corner lot. There is a contributing house on the lot that will be retained, and the proposal shows no alteration to that historic building at all. There is also a non-contributing building on the lot that will be demolished. Just to remind you about Part 1, the site plan and massing was approved in March of 2017. Before that, many years before that, there had been a one-story house and a two-story commercial building on this lot. The new proposal doesn't recreate that. In fact, it's sort of the opposite of that. It will go back with a one-story commercial building and a two-story townhouse building. The townhouse building has 3 units. And as I said, the site plan of this and the general massing was approved in March. So it's back to review the details and materials. The one-story commercial building will be 21 feet tall from grade to the parapet of a flat roof with slab floor at grade. That's typical of corner commercial buildings. The materials will be brick with stone or cast stone details, and staff recommends to see those samples for approval. It has storefront window systems on the 2 street-facing elevations, and it does have windows and doors on the other elevations. The townhouse component, when it was reviewed before in March as the Part 1 SP, the commission approved it with a condition that the townhouses be reduced from 3 stories to 2 stories. And the applicant has made the change. The new elevation is shown on the bottom of that image. Staff finds that that revision meets the condition of the commission's decision in March. The townhouse building will be 35 feet tall, which is the same height as the previous version, and it matches the height allowed by the design guidelines. The foundation will be between 1 and 2 feet exposed above grade, falling down towards the west as the grade drops on the lot. The building will have an eave height of 23 feet above the floor level or foundation level. The materials will be brick on the walls with brick to grade. Staff recommends a material change at the foundation line, as would be typical of historic residential buildings. Staff recommends approval of the proposed 1-story commercial building and 2-story townhouses with the following conditions: that the foundation height of the townhouses is expressed with a material change on the exterior at the foundation line, that the foundation height of the townhouses is consistent with finished floor heights of houses across Buchanan Street, to be verified by staff in the field, that the locations of mechanical and utility connections and mailboxes are approved by staff, and that the selections for exterior brick, stone, or cast stone, front porch, stoop, floors and stairs, vestibule roofs, and window and door selections are approved by staff prior to purchase and installation. And meeting those conditions, staff finds that this meets the sale in town guidelines for materials and new construction.
Thank you, Sean. Is the applicant here?
He is, yes.
Okay.
I'll clear the way.
No requirement for you to come, but are you, applicant, are you?
Sorry, I guess he has no comments, but questions if you, available to answer questions if you have.
All right. Very. Does he have? Ben, do you have your speaker on, please, sir? Sorry about that. There you go.
Okay, and better? Huh? Hello?
You want to move
Is
it
this thing
over?
The question, masonry construction, where the roofs are sort of stepping out, the masonry, where it's stacking stops, and then where it extends over a roof below, there's sodding. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, you can see in the bottom right of the west elevation.
On
Staff-
the townhouse?
Yeah, on the townhouse.
Oh, yeah,
That's pretty
just, I
common.
see.
Trying to stack bricks on top of shingles is, in modern construction, typically not how it's done. It's non-traditional, but I think it's understood, and that's not problematic in any way in terms of just constructability of that and how
Yeah,
it turns out.
I see that, and I hadn't really even noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's minimal. That's one of those things that not a lot of people notice.
yeah.
I just want to
And
make sure
those
we were good
nested
with it.
gables where one's right on top of the other with just a few inches or a foot in between, it might be.
I mean, to construct that and do a lintel that stacks it's a very difficult thing to do in wood frame construction. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it to construct it as much as it's just not typical, because those party walls would have been masonry and you would have seen masonry exposed there. But I think that we understand that and that the outcome is as shown. I don't take objection to it. I just wanted to point it out that would be something that would be different than what you would see historically. I think it meets the guidelines in terms of
Okay.
materiality, but I just wanted to point out that's the way you would build it, and that's the way it's going to look at the end of the day.
Certainly, wouldn't be an issue if you wanted to add that as a condition, that be masonry.
I'm not sure I want to do that to the developer, because I just want to make sure it's something that we're aware of and that we look at on projects. It is very difficult. I think thin brick would be the only way that you would do that, and it's a bit false and potentially problematic for an applicant. I just, again, it was something to point out that those things jump out, at least to me, they jump out when you're driving down the street and see modern construction in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments on that? Okay. All right. For now, open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners, discussion?
Seeing no comments, I'm happy to make a motion. With regard to 1801 to 1803 Fifth Avenue North, I move for approval with staff conditions.
Okay. Commissioner Price? Commissioner Johnson has made the second. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you. And appreciate that comment too, Commissioner Mosley.
There we go. I'm not used to using microphones, so let me start over. So 921 Walter is a non-distributing home in the Waverly Belmont Conservation Zoning Overlay. A codes permit was issued for the home as well as for the outbuilding in November of 2015. At this time, staff did not review the project because it was prior to the overlay taking effect, but any alterations to the home or to the outbuilding have to follow the guidelines at this time. The current violation is in regards to the existing outbuilding. We were contacted by the applicant in April 2021 to construct a balcony-type element. The plan initially was to construct a handrail and a pair of doors as part of the addition, but it did not include a projecting element. A completed application was not received and a permit was not issued. In October of 2021, an inspection revealed that projecting balcony was installed without a permit. The balcony does meet Section 4 of the guidelines for materials and Sections 7C1 through 4 for setbacks. The balcony, again, as constructed, was part of the original dormer, which we did not review at the time because, again, it was prior to the guidelines taking effect. It was measured at about 17 feet by the applicant, but staff measured it at 4'8". Based on Section 78 of the guidelines, dormers can only be 14 feet wide. The current width exceeds the information provided in the guidelines. The balcony also measures at 55.5 square feet and exceeds the 30 square feet allowed under the guidelines. The project as constructed does not meet guideline sections 75 and 78. Staff recommends removing the projecting portion of the balcony and the railing. Staff recommends removing the projecting portion of the balcony and that the railing be moved back so it is flush with the wall. With this alteration, the new work will meet the design guidelines with the exception of the width. That discrepancy is minimal at best. So staff recommends that the projecting porch of the balcony be cut back so that the railing is flushed with the exterior wall of the outbuilding within 60 days. With the alteration, the violation can meet Section 75 for projecting balconies and Section 78 for dormers for the Waverly Belmont Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. And I believe the applicant is here.
Thank you, Kelly.
Just press this.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Bonfield. My husband apologizes. He wanted to be here also presenting today, but thank you to the staff for your support, and thank you to the commission for allowing me to speak. 921 Waldkirk is our home. We've lived in 12 South since 2015, but just moved into this house last year. I don't want to repeat what Kelly said, but I just wanted to take the map from the official report, and I did want to overlay the green triangle there. This is the portion of the public purview where the balcony is visible from. The entire balcony is not visible. It's just a portion of the balcony. It can be seen from the split between the houses there. And then also the gray shaded circle represents where you cannot see the balcony, so you can't see it even from the alley behind that row of houses or any other public street surrounding, backwards, sides, anything. And then just to reiterate that this is a new build, the house and the outbuilding, which was permitted before the historic overlay. Although we try to keep with the look of the neighborhood and everything, but sizing seems to be very different than what would be approved for historic, like the height of our house, the height of the outbuilding, things like that. Although, you know, you've seen it, it does have a very neighborhood look. The next slide here is just to show that in the official report, you probably noticed the giant hole in front of the outbuilding. When we moved into the house last year, we quickly found out that our entire backyard was built by an unlicensed contractor. It was beyond disrepair. Even the pool could not be repaired. We've spent the last year with our yard looking like this, unable to use our garage. We're involved in lawsuits and hundreds of thousands of dollars of expense in this, which in no way is anyone's fault here. I only bring this up to say that we recognize the need for licensed contractors with good reputations, and this is who we got to finish the inside of this apartment guest house. So why this balcony? Well, we were walking around the neighborhood with our dog. We take many walks, and there are just these types of balconies all over the place. They look great, they integrate, the guest suite with the backyard, and they integrate the guest suite with the house. We wanted to get rid of the Airbnb feel, the like exclusiveness and privacy factor from our home with the guest suite, and we wanted to integrate it more and make it a place for close family and close friends to stay. We have absolutely zero intention of ever renting this space. This is, you may notice, we're adding to our family any day now, and we're going to need all the help we can get. So this is for our family and friends to come and visit and stay with us. The design, it's funny that Kelly mentioned, you know, the recommendation of pulling the balcony back a couple, like a foot and a half, or to be flush with the wall. Initially, we wanted to just have it about a foot wide, coming out from the wall. And when we started looking at it, we noticed that the floor actually is below the roof line, the floor of the guest suite. And so that, coupled with the need for a slope for rain drainage, is what ended us up taking the balcony to the edge of the roof line so that we could make sure that the gutters were in line and everything else. That's kind of how this got to be a foot or a foot and a half longer. And then also, as I mentioned, we got the original idea from walking around the neighborhood. When I first talked to Historic back in April, I was told that there were no balconies in the area and the balconies were a violation and we couldn't have them. I wasn't really clear on what exactly the violation was. And so, you know, I just took millions of pictures of all these balconies around the area. Here's just a couple examples of them. You know, these are seen from multiple angles in the street. I think they look great, but I mean, every one of these is within 2 blocks of our house and all in the historic overlay. We wanted it to be cohesive with the main house, so the doors in the middle picture there, the doors mirror our back doors, which is the picture below. The materials, the color of the wood, the wood that we chose under the balcony mirrors the porch on the back of the house. The little lanterns go with the little lanterns on our house. So we just tried to keep it all, you know, together. And that is a picture on the left-hand side of the portion of the balcony that you can see. In fact, in the official report, there's a picture taken close up of the balcony. That is not from the public purview. That is taken from our neighbor's yard, which I'm not sure how that picture came to be because our neighbors, Natalie and Darden Copeland, they fully support the balcony as is. They have the main view of it from their backyard. And I mean, they offered to come here today, but I didn't know where we were at in the process, so I told them not to come. But anyway, all that to say that I do realize this is a violation. I finally understand exactly what the violation is. It took a long time to narrow it down to figure out what it exactly was. This has been a learning process for everyone. I explained to my licensed contractor that, you know, we needed to go through Historic and that Historic was saying there was some sort of issue. And he, you know, convinced me that I did not explain the issue correctly to the staff. He convinced me that because our house was a new build and because the balcony was under 100 square feet, it did not require a permit. And that clearly, like, I just didn't do a good job in emails. Also, I tried to call and set up a meeting, but I mean, COVID was like rampant then, and we were at the height of the construction time of the year. So it makes sense to me that I wasn't encouraged to set up a meeting with the staff, but that was my intention. I really tried to do the right thing. So this has been a learning experience for everybody. I would say that this message has reached about 50 people, our neighbors, our friends in the area, in the community. Our contractors, his associates, his subs, everyone has been through this with us. I have had this on my mind constantly since we got the violation letter in October. We have all been brainstorming, and I have been updating them on the process and exactly like what went wrong, how this could have gone better, what we should have done. So your message has reached a lot of people. Really, we would ask for a variance here. We're talking about 25 and a half square feet difference between the allowable 30 and not. The look of the balcony would not change from the public purview, just moving the railing back. It would have pretty much exactly the same look from the street. The cost would be astronomical compared with the effect of this change, and we would not be able to use the guest house for, I don't know how long it would take to find somebody to do this. But just to foster neighborhood understanding and community feel, we request a variance, and so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bonfield. Also, we did receive public comment from your neighbor, the Copelands.
Oh.
So they did send us.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they did. So I just want you to know that.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. Okay, commissioners? And thank you, applicant, for your detailed explanation.
I think this commission and me and my history on this commission have been pretty strict about, in the event when the correct permits aren't pulled and, things happen that then we have to come, and they're always terrible. They're always very difficult situations. And in this instance, to be honest, with the way that it looks, the roof line already sticking out, and it just being about the same as the outer roof line, and pulling it back to me would still kind of look the same in my eyes. I'm inclined by a few of her arguments, and also when I was reading this earlier, that I just don't know if it would look that different with the changes, but, I'll hear the commissioners. But again, as someone who, going back and forth between, following the guidelines and the rules and this instance, where I just don't think it's that much of a difference in look for the neighborhood.
Okay.
In reviewing this, I think, and I want to thank the applicant for her application. It was very thorough, and we appreciate your presentation. In looking at this, I had memories of a similar project where we had a balcony constructed that was projecting, and our decision was that it had to be pushed back or removed. So in looking at this, I think we have to almost look at it as if it hasn't been constructed yet, and would we grant a variance for this design? And the thing that makes this different than another project where we required the removal is visibility. That project was located on a corner, so it was on a street corner, so it was visible to the right-of-way there, where this one does have very limited sight lines from the public access. So that's where I see a difference in that. I'm not quite decided on what I think, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner.
I too agree with Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Fitz. Typically, as a historical zoning commission, we are charged with follow the guideline and encourage, even though new building is follow specific guideline. But in this case, I think it's a internal facing building. It's not visible from alley facing. So sometimes I think we did give variance, as Commissioner Fitz says, like because it's internal, we can give little variance, maybe a little, 25 square foot larger than it allowed, but it would be appropriate because it's not visible from the street. I think we did give that kind of variance with another project. For that prospect, I think applicant did a great job, especially providing us another balcony and, previous, which was probably before community adopted guideline. But nonetheless, there's already existing second-story balcony as large and as deep as this subject property. So I am inclined to go against that recommendation and take up on applicants to give variance in this case.
Thank you, Commissioner.
If I think I understand the things that work here or where this project does not meet the guidelines, one if we allow it to remain as constructed, I think noted in the record should be that when it is noted in the record in the application, it's an existing build that was prior to the guidelines going into effect. And if somebody, I think correctly mentioned, would we approve this if it were submitted as drawn, not as built, but as drawn today? And at 14 feet 8 inches wide, existing construction, certainly I feel like it's unreasonable to request an applicant to remove 8 inches from the width from a constructability standpoint of it exceeding the guidelines as constructed. I'm talking about the width of the dormer. And to have a balcony that would be of equivalent width is not an unreasonable request or an unreasonable thing for us to do. I think I want to understand and perhaps allow the staff to speak on this. Is the fact merely that the balcony is projecting, does it move this project outside of the very prescribed portions of the DADU guidelines to have a projecting balcony? And, or if it were 25 feet less, could it project to the extent that it is projecting now?
So yes, we agreed with you and didn't make the recommendation to change the width.
Sure.
Didn't think that was enough to worry about. But we did think that the square footage of the deck should be pretty close to what the guidelines allow for. And so we thought the easiest way was just to cut it back.
To cut it back. So if an applicant, if this were constructed, going back to the building as constructed prior to the guidelines going in place, if an applicant came to us and wanted to build a 55-foot, no, let's see, 38 foot, whatever the guidelines would allow, it could project as much as the current construction is projecting if it were that large. Is that correct?
Yes, if it was the 30 square feet, so then it would just be narrower and
Right.
deeper, or it could be wide and less
And really-
deep, it
and
just
less deep.
however that 30 square feet came about.
And so then what I'm trying to gather from this is distilling down the real ask of this applicant would be, can I make again, if it weren't constructed, can I get an extra 25 feet on my balcony inside these very prescribed guidelines for a DADU, which this already doesn't meet because it was constructed before that. It's pushed beyond the limits, and to the applicant, and I think those that might come after this, as a means of explanation, these DADU guidelines were very specifically brought over and prescribed to make outbuildings fit and right-sized within neighborhoods. And so you're taking something that is very prescribed and you're applying it to something that is possibly already outside of those, outside of those guidelines, and making it, by granting this, if it weren't constructed, it would be even more outside of those guidelines. If we approve this, it appears that based on the applicant's presentation and some of the comments by members, I think it would be helpful for us, and we have reiterated that it is facing, inward facing as opposed to outward facing. There might be a different outcome if that were the case, and that this, this discussion is fact dependent on this particular situation, for what it's worth. So there we go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a question to staff. So I know we're pretty aware of how we project this for a future application. So in the minutes that you put in there, we don't need to reiterate, or we do. What I'm hearing is visibility internal to the lot. There could be some
Existing
other.
building.
Say again. Existing building. It was prior to the overlay. I'm kind of summarizing what I'm hearing so that we're not caught in some web at the next time.
And if I may add to that list, also the small discrepancy between what's allowed and what was constructed.
Okay.
So it's not a huge difference.
Right. So I think, Commissioners, unless you want to continue to have more conversation, is that we've clarified reasons for if we do vote to approve it or disapprove it, that we have concrete reasons why we do. We're in agreement? Okay? Other than if the Vice Chair has any other comments? Okay? All right. A motion or further discussion?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make the motion, barring any other comments from fellow commissioners. But regarding 921 Waldkirch Avenue, I move to approve the balcony as constructed.
There's a motion by Commissioner Jones. There's a second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Commissioner Mosley is opposed. However, with the vote, the motion passes. Okay. Thank you, applicant. Thank you again, staff. Thank you, commissioners, for the discussion.
Okay, so the next item is 1014 Lawrence Avenue. It's a pre-1914 brick house that contributes to the historic character of the Waverly Belmont Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The house's lot is a double width at 100 feet wide, and the house is shifted to the left side of the lot. So the house has a large side yard to the right. The applicant proposes a new infill house to the right of the historic house. This would be a side-by-side duplex. The application also includes a detached outbuilding. Staff finds that a side-by-side duplex is appropriate on this lot because the lot is double width at 100 feet wide. The proposed site plan allows for 10 feet of yard space between the right side of the historic house and the new infill. Staff finds this to be appropriate as most houses in the immediate vicinity are separated by a minimum of 10 feet. The infill will be 5 feet from the right side property line and approximately 50 feet from the rear property line, meeting the base zoning standards. There will be 20 feet from the back of the house to the carport. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories, which could be in keeping with the historic context, except that staff finds its maximum ridge height of 28 feet 10 inches from finished floor to be taller than what is appropriate for the site. The proposed infill will be, The proposed infill will be a detached duplex structure located to the right of an existing historic house on the same lot. The lot is 100 feet wide, and staff therefore finds that a second detached house facing Lawrence could be appropriate if its scale were modest. Staff finds the proposed maximum height ranging from 28 feet 10 inches to 32 feet 7 inches at the front because of the cross slope, that this overall height and scale is out of scale for the site. By comparison, the historic house to the left is between 29 feet 6 inches and 31 feet 7 inches tall from grade. The applicant's drawing shows that the house to the right is between 25 feet and 27 6 feet tall, but we have an application from a couple years ago where there was an addition done to that house, and those drawings show it as being between 24 and 26 feet tall. But that's just the different sizes of the houses on either side of this proposed infill. The historic house on the left side of the lot is unusually wide at 45 feet at the front. This leaves only 47 feet of frontage on the lot at the rightmost corner of the historic house, between the rightmost corner of the historic house for the new infill to be situated. Situating a new infill in this relatively narrow portion of the lot is only appropriate if the scale and overall height of the infill is no taller than the historic house on either side. For this site, given its constraints and slopes, staff finds that a maximum height of 22 feet to 24 feet from grade is most appropriate. Staff therefore recommends that the height of the infill be no taller than 24 feet at its tallest point from grade. Here are the side elevations. And then here is the rear elevation, and on this elevation, staff finds that the proposed gambrel roof is not a common roof form in the neighborhood, and also kind of makes the height at the back of the house seem more like a 2-story scale than a 1.5-story scale. So staff is recommending that there not be a gambrel roof form on the infill. Here is the outbuilding elevations. The outbuilding meets all the requirements in the design guidelines. Here are some context photos. The top photo is the historic house on the site with the vacant lot to its side, and then the historic house on either side. The middle one shows the houses kind of further down Lawrence Street to the right of the site. Across the street on the other side of Lawrence is actually outside of the overlay. There is new construction that was done prior to the overlay, so that block was not included in the boundaries. Again, the catty corner from the site is an area that's outside of the overlay and has a lot of infill houses that we did not approve. And then this bottom picture shows the houses across, I guess that's 11th Avenue South, or 10th Avenue, yeah, 10th or 11th Avenue South, I'm getting confused. And they are within the historic overlay. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. The finished floor height be consistent with the finished floor heights of adjacent historic houses. The maximum ridge height be no taller than 24 feet from grade at its tallest point. The rear roof form be a hip or gable rather than a gambrel. The front porch columns have caps and bases. MHCC approve all windows and doors, the roof shingle color, and finally, staff approve the HVAC locations. With these conditions, we find that it meets the design guidelines.
Thank you, Melissa. Applicant?
Don't know if the applicant's here. Yeah, the applicant is not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Open public hearing? Close public hearing? Okay, any questions to Melissa? Thank you, sir.
I need a few more monitors over here, sorry. Since the applicant's not here to answer these questions, I'm curious, I certainly get with a gambrel roof, and not that we review the floor plans, but this is a 5-bedroom house there's a lot of house on this street. And I feel like the applicant certainly can have another look at that and figure out the second floor piece. But I'm wondering if, in guidance to the applicant, to bring the front portion of the house down, if a taller gable in the back would, by squishing it down, where I'm getting to is by squishing it down in the same proportions as the house next door, it appears to me that it would nearly eliminate the opportunity for, the half floor would be essentially an attic. And if that's what has to be, then, that's what has to be. But I'm curious in providing the applicant some guidance, if a house that were at the front form lower,
Right.
and then the second floor sort of extended out beyond that, you drop a bonus room and a bedroom upstairs, but that you might either, I don't know that it would necessarily be a gable, but perhaps there's a hip that goes back and it would allow some greater height in the back. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah, I am, and that might be akin to, actually, I think what happened next door, 24, 26, I'm sorry, that's not the address, I read the numbers, but, that house next door had an addition that, the historic house is a one-story house, but then the addition in the back was more like a 1.5 story, so I mean, we could think of it as something like, when we look at additions, we allow up to 2 feet taller, so maybe a portion up there could go up. If the commissioners felt that would be appropriate, we could give that suggestion to the applicant.
I think, again, we're not here to design it, and I do feel like there'll be less house when they get finished with that, and I know a lot of these things are driven, the economics of these are driven by that, but certainly, pressing scale down like by 0.8 is probably not gonna do it for this house in terms of height. I think there's some rework certainly of the upstairs. That's all the commentary I've got. I don't take any issue with staff's analysis.
I agreed with all of the staff recommendations on this, and unless anyone else has further comments, I'll go ahead and make a motion. With regards to 1014 Lawrence Avenue, I move for approval with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Fitz and Commissioner Williams has made the second. Did you have another comment, Commissioner Price? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? None seeing? The motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, next up is 1308 Forest Avenue. So the commission approved an addition to this property in December. The applicant deferred the outbuilding at that time, but they have made some slight revisions and are back today with a plan for the outbuilding. So the outbuilding has a modern design and form that correspond with the design of the previously approved addition. The materials do need final staff review. This is a large lot, and the footprint of the outbuilding is well within the allowable square footage at about 710 square feet. The applicant proposes the ground level to be 10 feet from the addition, as you can see here, rather than the 20 feet specified in the guidelines. The second level is also connected to the addition with an elevated deck. Staff finds that if the deck were removed or lowered to grade, then the distance to the outbuilding could be appropriate, as the footprint of the outbuilding is fairly modest compared to what is allowable for a lot of this size. Staff finds that an outbuilding with a small footprint is more in keeping with the guidelines than an addition that connects to the house and steps wider in the rear. The proposed design is a full 2 stories tall, while the primary structure is only 1 story tall. The guidelines clearly state that full 2-story outbuildings are only appropriate behind a 2-story primary building. Further, the allowable wall height behind a 1-story is 12 feet. Because of the flat roof form, the wall height is the same as the ridge height. Therefore, the proposed wall height is 17 feet. Staff finds that the combined 2-story form, flat roof, and wall heights do not meet the guidelines for this lot. The guidelines do allow for projecting balconies of no more than 30 square feet, as we've just discussed. While a large elevated deck connecting the 2 structures is not appropriate, a revised version of this outbuilding could include a small projecting balcony. In conclusion, staff recommends disapproval of the proposed outbuilding, finding it does not meet sections 7B, 2, 4, and 5 for height, roof, slope, and massing, or section 7D for add-on features of the Lackland Springs East End part of the guidelines and the full consolidated guidelines. The applicant is here and would like to speak. We did hand out some hard copies. It's just an abridged version of what you received electronically. Looks like we have a model today as well.
Okay.
Guys, may remember last time.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Schutz. I live at 5025 Hillsborough Pike. And with me today are Andy and Janelle Mama, who are the owners of the property and here to answer questions as well. Thanks for having me. This is the kind of project, when you're wearing your fingers down to nubs in architecture school that you really dream about. And clients like these who understand design and are open to contemporary design, it really is an opportunity, and I'm really grateful to be here today. Thank you, Jenny. I know this is a difficult project, and I appreciate all the communication we've had. If you were here last month, you may remember seeing this last month. I'm glad that we got a chance to defer it because working with the staff, we have reduced the massing of the project, and also gives time if any neighbors had any comments, concerns, that they could get in touch with us. Last month, Councilman Withers wrote a letter that said he hadn't heard any negative comments and that he appreciated that the height of the accessory wing, if you will, matched the front porch and was lower than the eve height of the existing house. In talking with Jenny, I recounted on the story where when I worked at the commission in the 20-aughts, I'd have people come in and they'd say, hey, the drawings aren't great, but it's going to look good. And I was like, oh, well, what am I here for? Here you go. No, we needed good drawings, and that's what we really hope to provide with you to show that we're really trying to go the extra mile to make sure that this is compatible with the existing context. That being said, what we have is a bit of what you might call an ad building or an outdition. It's structurally connected to the existing house, but it also has kind of an accessory use. So I'll try and go through a few points as to how we tried to meet the guidelines with respect to your time here. First, talking about why the flat roof, and if you turn to cover 1 in this packet here, I'll read from the 4th paragraph here. This roof shape was chosen for its stylistic consistency, efficiency of materials, reduced visual massing characteristics, and low wind profile. The roof shape matches the front porch of the historic house and allows for the potential future installation of a green roof. It's a roof type that is exhibited on historic buildings and accessory structures within the district and has been approved by the commission in the past. The height of the roof is it says 17 feet here, but now it's 16 feet from the courtyard, above the courtyard, which is compatible with the roof grade measurement of the house's historic eaves and matches the lowered first floor eve of the addition. And it's important that we lowered it this 1 foot because we're talking about 1 and 2 story here. And back in December, you may or may not remember having a case come before you where you had some accessory structures in an SP that were 2.5 stories or 3 living stories within a shell. And at that meeting, the commission decided, I think based upon a planning commission decision as well, that we weren't really going to look at how many occupiable stories are in there. We were going to look at the outside form. So what we've tried to do in our work with staff is make it so that the average height of this little accessory wing matches the average height of the historic house. So I wrote this down, so I'll try and say it again. If we use the existing house's exterior wall height from grade as the definition of 1 story, the accessory wing is 1 story because its average exterior wall height matches the historic house. Why is this project unique? Well, first and foremost, and you can probably notice this just by swinging by, the lot is unusually wide. We have proximity to commercial node, both at Woodland and 14th Street, and then also 5 Points. We have proximity to unusually large apartment building across the way, which used to be a school for the blind. We have an unusually large slope from front to back. We have proximity to a couple of previous tornado paths, which, as somebody who doesn't want a building to fall in on a client is important. Proximity to existing large accessory structures. So next door, there's a 1,000-foot accessory structure that has 2 interior floors, and then right across the alley, there's one that also has 2 interior floors. So there are some unique proposal characteristics as well. This is a modern design philosophy, which is, again, something that you don't always get the opportunity to do as a designer. It takes a special type of client. We have an interconnected steel structure. So right now it's imagined that this accessory wing will be integrated structurally with the addition. So again, it's not exactly an outbuilding. It's not exactly an addition. It's kind of somewhere in between. This is going to help to buttress both of those things in a high wind event. And the connection is going to be steel, not wood. So I can totally sympathize with staff that, you don't want to approve something where all of a sudden you're going to get tons and tons of applications that say, I've got this cool party deck, I want to, bolt onto the back of my house, something that doesn't fit with the design, it doesn't have that same durability. That is not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do something that is integral to both pieces. As a positive side effect, when you're able to use a steel connecting piece like that, we can eliminate the interior stair, so we can bring down the footprint of that accessory wing, the add building addition, if you will. So we've talked a little bit about one-story and two-story. Projects like this, if you look around, you can find many different projects that the commission has approved in the past, depending on some unique context. If you turn to the back of the packet, and I think it's going to be the second to last page, there's a house on Boscobel Street that, when it was approved, related to a hipped roof, I believe Victorian-style building, just a couple doors down. And in that case, when the commission looked at that, they looked at the massing, and they also looked at the shapes that are created by a hipped roof. And that's what we've tried to do in looking at this existing historic house. With a hipped roof, you read those horizontal lines very clearly. And so in many instances, a flat roof or a strong horizontal line could be more compatible with a hipped roof form than creating a gable, especially if that gable isn't able to match the same pitch. So where does that leave us? I mean, it's hard when you have something that doesn't fit neatly into the guidelines. As a commissioner, I would be like, okay, what do I hang my hat on? What is my bellwether? And for me, it is the context, and I think that is rooted in the Secretary of Interior standards and the guidelines. And so I think that's what we've tried to do, is go back to the context of this lot and pull our cues from that. You can even see on the very front, and this is a page that wasn't in the original package, you'll see kind of a rendering of that. Shows how we try to pick up on the proportions of the existing house to create this addition. And you'll see even the lot width, taking it down according to the golden section starts to inform some of those heights and widths and the ways that the buildings are separated. So, in conclusion, I just want to say we're truly not trying to subvert the guidelines here, but we're trying to most faithfully fulfill the guidelines with consideration of this unique context. We're afraid if we are asked to follow, or if we're asked to fit neatly into a specific category, the resulting accessory structure or addition will be more massive and less compatible with historic context. So you have the packets before you. And again, you may remember this model from last time. Sorry if I kind of hold it up here. It's a little like Say Anything. What I've tried to do is take the massing of the house and show what a, is that my time? Okay. This is a traditional 1.5-story structure that meets the guidelines, 12-foot eave height, 25-foot ridge height, 1,000-foot footprint, and underneath it.
Matt, you
is-
have 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Underneath it is what we're proposing. So that's what we're trying to do, is reduce the massing, stay stylistically consistent, and meet the guideline.
Thank you. Okay, open public hearing? Close public hearing? Matt, thank you for a very detailed presentation. And just the modeling and also the drawings, so you can say on that, it's well done on that portion. So, you know, you worked hard on that, so we want to acknowledge your work for your client.
So, well, I look forward to seeing the model here in just a minute, and I do not have the benefit of last month's discussion, but I will, I guess I'll start it off with some of the argument for is a little, I find, I mean, a little, I don't know, not mince word, it's dubious in that the original house, the house takes advantage of a basement and has a garage associated with it and an outbuilding, which doesn't necessarily have to contain a garage. I don't think that's written in the guidelines. Means that, you know, it is an outbuilding to provide office space and whatever else. Again, the use is not critical to us. I think it is within the zoning and meets in that regard. But it's the two together are pushing the bounds of many things that are in violation of the guideline that I'm having trouble saying yes to this and being able to say no to other things. I think perhaps an encouragement to the applicant or to Matt would be maybe to lean a little heavier on a basement argument and a one-story outbuilding. Perhaps could, I guess, give you a little more leeway. Maybe, I could be looking at this entirely wrong, but I think given the staff's stated objection to a two-story form, there seems to be that without a tremendous, you know, just going back to the drawing board and squishing this thing down one floor, I don't think that meets what your client's needs are and architecturally meets what you're trying to accomplish. But that might be, depending on what the other deliberation is, might be a way to conceive of the project in a way that buttresses both an argument for staying in this design direction and less some connecting elements to the main house could result in a project that would more closely meet the guidelines.
The model shows that first floor is sunken into the ground, so it is imagined as not a full, as a basement, not a full downstairs.
And I guess I'm saying that argument holds weight with me personally. I think if it looked more like a basement, it would help even more in terms of its being in the ground, and I think some manipulation of the ground and how the sizing of the courtyard and some of those other things makes that argument even more believable. But I'll leave it to you to meet your client's needs and to make a convincing basement for what it's worth.
Thank you, Commissioner.
This one, I don't have strong denial or strong approval, but I just want to share where I am in the process. Because this is a really kind of unique design, and as far as addition, applicant brought modern element to existing traditional house. So the back of the house has really modern, unique, different design. And so in that sense, I was kind of trying to understand as a holistic one project. So because applicant did really great providing us as interior state a guideline, and as well as all the neighborhood comparison and picture, and what if they were to follow traditional guideline, they would have choice to build a little bit bigger, rather kind of monstrous, structure, but it looks like traditional. So if this are clearly not their goal to build that kind of structure. So in that sense, I decided to kind of look at what if this is not an outbuilding, rather extension of addition. It's unique addition. Sometimes addition goes not straight, but sometimes addition goes wider from certain point. So I'm looking at that point. So this addition, interesting addition, starts 105 feet from the street. And then this unique addition is 700 square foot. So I was looking at the original houses, I believe, 1773 square foot. And the previously approved addition is 1,045 square foot. So if we were to treat this as an addition, that will be 1,745 square foot. So it's technically not doubling the size, close, but not doubling the size. So in that sense, I can see that as a not outbuilding, but rather portion of addition. So if we do, probably meet the guideline. So, but if we approve, what kind of, influence to other application coming, thereafter. So I have, concern on that as well. But in this unique situation, I could see applicant points. So that's where I am really struggling, which way should we decide. But I think applicant provide us enough evidence and enough points to consider. So would it be within our virtue and within our authority to approve with this location? So I'm kind of struggling in that point. I just wanted to share with the fellow commissioners.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner.
May I add that you have had requests in the past for this upper level type of connection that has not been approved. And the guideline, and this is something I think we've all struggled with over the years. And so that's why part of the reason for the consolidation is to make it really clear how the outbuildings are measured, both the outbuilding and the primary house, and why we were very specific that 2 stories shouldn't be on 1.5. Because sometimes the grade drops, but sometimes it rises. And so we were trying to keep the 2 proportional.
Duly noted.
Go ahead, Cyril.
I actually think this is an excellent design solution for this lot and beautifully done. I think it would be a great addition to the neighborhood. The difficulty, and I appreciate the applicant's reference to the Department of the Interior standards, and I do think that, you know, whereas the Department of the Interior really encourages new buildings, new construction, to look as of the time it's built, the guidelines don't necessarily do that. So to me, what I see is a discrepancy between the guidelines and the Department of the Interior standards. The guidelines are created by the neighborhood, and typically the neighbors like to keep things looking alike. And so things in the guidelines, like the requirement for a sloped roof, are things that are written into those guidelines, approved by the neighbors, and those are harder for us to overcome. So that's where my struggle is coming in with this project.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I agree, just building on that. I like contemporary design, and I'm not opposed to a flat roof or contemporary design. I do see very stark in black and white in the guidelines that one story is what we're supposed to be approving behind a one-story house, not two-story. I think you could still achieve a great contemporary design and still meet that guideline with a one-story outbuilding. And again, with Robin's note that, you know, we have not made a habit of approving connector decks like this, and I'm not compelled that this case is the one where we need to start doing that. So I still think you could get a good design, the applicant could get a good design within the guidelines and still have a contemporary outbuilding.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll just follow up with what the other commissioners have said, because they've said it very well. And Commissioner Stewart, I agree, and I'm kind of with you. On its own, I love this project. I really like this project a lot, and am also struggling about how to reconcile it with the guidelines and to make it fit. So Commissioner Price, I think you're kind of spot on. I am compelled with where Commissioner Mosley was going with, can it be, I think with what you were saying, it's like, could it be sunken and have a basement level and still be a one-story structure? Is there a way to accomplish that with grade? Just something to consider.
Robin, may I ask for a legal clarification?
We're closed public hearing, so give us a moment.
Okay.
Anyone else? I think you've thought this through quite well.
I mean, I hate to say, I just agree, you know, I'm also struggling with it in and of itself. This is the kind of house I would build, but yeah, I don't live in an overlay, and, you know, the neighborhoods bring about these guidelines, and, you know, there are so many things that staff points out, and again, I'm, you know, not one of the designers on the board, or on this commission, but I do agree, you know, on first glance, it is just kind of a lot to me, and there are just several things that we would be kind of taking, you know, making exceptions on that we just don't normally do. And so that's, you know, the struggle with this project. And, you know, so I'm inclined to go with the staff recommendations at this point and see what can be worked out for another application, potentially to still get that contemporary look, but more in the guidelines of the neighborhood.
Dr. Williams, I'd like to hear from you.
My thoughts echo that those of the other commissioners, and that when I saw his efforts to reconcile this urban design with what had already was there, I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is really neat and thoughtful design. And I was very much compelled by your presentation. but nonetheless, the guidelines are very clear, I think, in regards to this particular case. So I'm inclined to support staff recommendations in this case.
Okay.
I was just going to add on to what I said earlier, but part of it too, we're not trying to work around like one exception, we're trying to work around several, and so that's also part of why I'm agree with staff recommendations, despite how much I like this project.
Thank you. Commissioners, this has been a good discussion. I have learned a lot from you all. Just having this internal and to have staff take note. Are we ready to take a vote?
Chairman Bell, may I ask for a legal clarification?
I've closed public hearing, and I think there's been enough discussion, so
Okay.
you've heard the commissioners.
I just want to say that per Tennessee state statute,
I've closed public hearing, Mr. Schutz.
the local guidelines must abide by the Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay. We heard you very loud and clear. Okay, ready to make a vote?
Yes, with regard to 1308 Forest Avenue, I move to approve the staff recommendation for disapproval of the outbuilding, finding that it does not meet the sections of guidelines that are listed in the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Price has made a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Vice Chair has made a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Noted that there's none opposed, that we've had a really good discussion, and we're going to assume that the applicant can continue to have discussion or confirm with the staff, and that is the vote of the commission. So thank you very much. We do appreciate it, and we have made that decision. So thank you.
The next item up is 756 Benton Avenue, a circa 1955 house that does not contribute to the historic character of the Waverly Belmont Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. MHCC staff has issued a demolition permit for this structure. I'm going to start with some context photos, just because I think here it makes sense to kind of look at the context before looking at the drawings. The top photo is the other non-contributing structure to the left of the house in question. And then that is the end of kind of where the fence is the end of the historic overlay. And beyond that are commercial structures that face 8th Avenue South, and those are outside the overlay. The bottom picture shows on the left the house that will be demolished for new infill. And then on the right, the two-story historic house immediately adjacent to it. And then the top photo, again, are two other historic houses just further down the street. They're kind of just on the other side of that White House in the previous slide. And then the bottom photo are the 1.5-story houses directly across the street. So here is the site plan. Staff finds that this proposed front setback and the overall setbacks and placement on the lot do meet the historic context. Here's the proposed front facade. The proposed infill is 2 stories with a maximum height of 32 feet from grade. This meets the historic context where, as you saw, there were several 2-story houses, and houses range in height from 25 feet to 45 feet. The 2-story house to the right at 756 Benton, again, that's that White House that we looked at, is approximately 34 feet from grade, but it is on a wider lot. Here are the side elevations. Staff finds that overall the height, scale, fenestration pattern, materials, and orientation all meet the design guidelines. Here are some perspective drawings of the project. And finally, staff is recommending approval with kind of our standard conditions about the finished floor height, approval of materials. And because this is a historic overlay, we will be reviewing all appurtenances like fencing and then the location of the HVAC we'll want to approve as well. So I don't believe that the applicant is here for this one, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Melissa. And then I have a question on this particular drawing here. So is it's flat, so is it contoured? I mean, this is what, as you said, it was,
According to the Metro maps, it is a fairly flat lot, and when you look at the, I don't think I have them in the presentation, but looking at the photos of the house next door, it is a relatively flat lot. I mean, no lot is 100% flat, but this one is on the flatter side for Nashville.
On sheet A1, it appears to slope across 150 feet, only 2 feet, which is not much slope at all.
Thus the question. You still need to refer to that, Melissa, or you're good to the question? Okay. We'll go from there. Okay. Open public, applicant, and you said the applicant's not here, so we will open public hearing. Okay, close public hearing.
Madam Chairman, I think this is a fairly straightforward project, and unless there's other discussion by the commissioners, I move for approval of 756 Benton Avenue with staff recommendations.
Vice Chair has made a motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Johnson has made a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. None opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Should have just stayed up here. Okay, so the next item is 280 Harding Place. It is a circa 1964 house that does not contribute to the historic character of the overlay, and staff has issued a demolition permit for this non-contributing structure. Here is the site plan. This block of Harding kind of has a fun curve to it. So the staff worked very closely with the architects to come up with a site plan that we think meets the historic context. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories, which is appropriate to the historic context where most houses are also 1.5 stories. And I'd like to thank the applicant for submitting this really great streetscape, which helps me and you understand the house in its context. The main portion of the house will have a ridge height of 25 feet above the floor line. There's some cross slope to the lot, and at its tallest point, the infill will be approximately 28 feet, 6 inches above grade. The right 16 feet of the house will be just 1 story in context, with a ridge height 4 feet lower than the main house. Staff finds that this meets the historic context, where houses range in height from 20 to 29 feet in height. And there are several houses kind of with a similar form where there's a taller portion and then a shorter kind of wing area that is just 1 story. So staff finds that this overall form and height does meet the historic context. Staff finds that the foundation line, which rises above the kind of typical floor line and goes up to the window line, while it's not super typical, it is found in the district, most notably at 254 Harding, so staff therefore finds it to be appropriate. Staff finds that the floor line location above grade is appropriate for the site's slope and is compatible with the historic context. So overall, staff is finding the ridge height, eave height, foundation heights, width, and overall scale are compatible with the overlay. Here are the side elevations. Overall, staff finds that the roof forms, materials, and orientation and the fenestration pattern to meet the design guidelines. And here are some context photos. The first photo at the top is the house in question, or site in question, is on the right side and the historic house to the left. The middle photo are kind of houses, or I'm sorry, that's the house. The middle photo is the house to the right of the site, and then the bottom photo are some of the houses further down to the left. So again, staff is recommending approval of the infill, and I'm sorry, it should not say Dadu there because there is no Dadu part of the project, so it's just the infill that we're looking at. Apologize for that typo. The finished floor height be consistent with the finished floor heights of the adjacent historic houses. Staff approve the materials and the HVAC location, and with those conditions, we find that the project meets the design guidelines. And the architect for the project is here.
Thank you, Melissa. Is the applicant, does the applicant want to come up or not? There's no pressure here, just asking. Till you waited the very last minute, I guess.
My name is Brittany Mount. I'm with Allard Ward Architects, 1618 16th Avenue South. And really just want to thank Melissa and the rest of the staff on this one. We worked really closely with them, and they were really helpful. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. All right, open public hearing. Close public hearing.
Madam Chair, with respect to 280 Harding Place, again, I think this one's pretty straightforward, and certainly an applicant who knows the guidelines and in most every case gets it right on the first submission to us. Not always the case, but having reviewed this one, finding it compliant in accord with the staff's recommendation, I move approval with the noted correction of the presentation of removal of the dadu in the summary.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Mosley made the motion and Vice Chair made the second. All in favor? Okay. None opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the next project is for 926 Russell Street. In October 2021, an administrative permit was issued to demolish the non-contributing house on this property. The application before you today is to construct a two-story single-family infill and a two-story outbuilding that also includes a dwelling unit. The infill and outbuilding meet all base zoning setbacks, and the front setback for the infill is consistent with the houses on either side. The proposed infill is 2 stories, and staff finds that the height, scale, and design of the house to be appropriate for the historic context on this block of Russell Street, and also to meet all design guidelines. So, and here are the right side and rear elevations. And here are the elevations for the outbuilding, which is also 2 stories and meets all design guidelines for outbuildings in Edgefield. And here are some context photos of the house. These are on the same block face of the subject property. And here are some context photos of houses across the street. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the infill and outbuilding with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, which are all standard comments for infill in the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. So
Thank you, Melissa.
I'm here if you have any questions.
Is the applicant here? Yes. Would you like to speak, or it's up to you?
Hi, I'm Mitchell Barnett. I'm the architect for the project. I really don't have much to add to the staff. We've certainly been working with the staff on this, submitted several preliminary sketches and designs, and kind of evolved into this final product here. And so we're certainly happy with their recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Okay, open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners?
So clarification, just for my knowledge, we mentioned in the staff recommendation a 5-inch exposure. Was that in question as to how we held that in some rewrite of the guidelines, or am I just imagining that?
So this property is in the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning overlay, so that it still says the maximum reveal of 5 inches.
Wonderful. No, thank you for clarifying. And noted that I think the architect has specified a width less than that, which certainly would be compliant. I just appreciate you clearing up my misunderstanding.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you.
Madam Chairman, as with the previous 2 cases, I think this is also fairly straightforward, a nice design. I want to commend the architect and the applicant for quality job and working with the staff as always. If there are no further comments or questions, I'd like to move for approval of the staff recommendation for 926 Russell Street.
Thank you, Commissioner Price. Vice Chair's made a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Is no opposition? Okay, and that motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for waiting, applicant.
All right, this last one is 1702 Forest Avenue. The application is to construct a 1 1/2 story single-family infill on the vacant lot at 1702 Forest. The home at 1702 Forest was a circa 1918 home in the Laughlin Springs Easton Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The property included a non-historic outbuilding, and the commission approved demolition of both the home and the outbuilding in July of 2021. And the structures have since been demolished and cleared from the site. The site at 1702 Forest Avenue is now vacant, and the applicant requests new infill on the site. The proposed infill meets all base zoning setbacks, and the proposed infill will be a 1 1/2 stories home with and 26 feet tall from grade. Staff finds the infill to meet all of the design guidelines for form, roof form, dormers, orientation, siding, setbacks, proportion and rhythm of openings, and staff finds that the project will meet the guidelines for utilities and materials with the following conditions. Staff recommends approval of the project with the following conditions, and these are all standard conditions as well. With these conditions, staff finds the proposed infill meets sections 4 for materials, 5 for new construction infill of Part 1 of the Laughlin Springs East End chapter of Part 2 of the design guidelines for turn of the 20th century districts. The applicant is here if you have any questions, and I can take any as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Applicant, since you have been patient.
I really don't have much to add other than what's in the report, other than just to thank Joseph and the rest of the staff for their time so far, and I can answer any questions if you have.
Just give us your name, just for the record.
Oh, sure. Britt DePriest, 1211 7th Avenue North.
Okay, thank you. Open public hearing, close public hearing. Any questions or a motion?
Madam Chairman, once again, a well-done, straightforward project, meeting the guidelines. We appreciate those. and with respect to 1702 Forest Avenue, I move for approval with staff conditions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second? Commissioner Johnson has made the second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. None opposed. The motion passes. Mr. Mosley, do you have any other questions? I see your head nodding. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Is anything else? Robin? We have finished our agenda.
Madam Chairwoman, I move for dismissal.
Yes, sir. The Vice Chair has asked for a, yes. Sure. Robin, do you want to mention that for our next meetings? We're changing our location, just for public record. Oh, okay.
Just for the public to make note that there are some meeting location changes for 2022. The following meetings will take place in the Bransford Conference Room at 2602 Bransford Avenue, April 20th, July 20th, and October 19th.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Jones. All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.